Here we go. Roll video.
I think anybody creating something new must have an adventure.
It's not cinema, it's something else.
My advice to a young filmmaker is to make a movie every week.
The whole bag of movies can be learned in about a day and a half.
But suspense is essentially an emotional process.
You gotta make films. You gotta make it and get it seen.
Cinema for me is a world of when I dream.
Welcome to Behind the Slate. I am your host, Aaron Strand, and my guest today is Sucharita Tyagi. Sucharita is a renowned film critic, radio DJ, and content creator. She got her start in a New Delhi radio station at the age of 19 and soon relocated to Mumbai, where she hosted shows focusing on independent and popular music. In 2015, she started working for the Indian film publication Film Companion, where her wildly popular video review series, Not a Movie Review, gained acclaim and criticism for her critique of films with misogynistic and nationalistic themes. Now, in 2020, she launched her own YouTube channel in which she reviews Indian and American films, goes behind the scenes of major film festivals, and interviews filmmakers from all backgrounds, from Joyland's Saim Sadiq to Oppenheimer's Christopher Nolan. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to have on the show Sucharita Tyagi. Sucharita, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Aaron. It's so nice to hear that kind of like all scrunched together. This and this and this. Life's good. I mean, what do I have to complain about? Everything's going great.
I mean, you're basically crushing it. It's like, I could have just summed it up of like, Sucharita Tyagi is a badass and she's crushing it.
I can't complain, dude. I'm having fun. I'm having a good time right now, exploring things here in the United States of America for the first time professionally. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I want to get to that sort of like later on in the interview about sort of like where you're at right now. But I want to start off with just how we met, because we met a few months ago at the New York Indian Film Festival, and you were moderating a talkback for a shorts block during which my short film, The Name, was shown. And it was honestly like, it was one of the best talkbacks I've ever taken part of. I mean, you had so clearly paid attention to all the films. You had reflected, and like, you know, you had just so, it was just so thoughtful, you know, and just so like you were just so present, which like a lot of times for talkbacks at like for short films at film festivals, it's kind of like the moderators clearly just like they barely watched the movies, they're just trying to get through it as fast as possible, and ever since you made that such strong impression, I've just been a huge fan of yours.
That's very kind of you, Aaron. I actually volunteered for that particular talkback Q&A session with the organizers of the New York Indian Film Festival, because they sent, I went to the website and I saw everything that was scheduled for the festival. And I really like the short film format. It is, you know, like your film was like, what, 7 minutes or 7.5 minutes? And then you can go up to 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It's such a dynamic format to be able to take one thought and it gives, and you know, kind of expand on it. It gives us such beautiful insight into the filmmaker who's telling the story. And I saw the lineup, and an Indian filmmaker, Shweta Basu Prasad's film was on it, and Danny Pudi's film was on it, who I have been such a huge fan of ever since discovering Community. And I asked them, listen, is Daniel Pudi attending? And they said, probably, we're not sure yet. So I was like, please send me all these movies. I want to watch all these films, and please allow me to do the Q&A. And then Danny Pudi did attend, and he's just as great as I thought he would be.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's great. It was so cool that that both of them were there. Now, so you're coming to the States and from this background of Indian film. And like, even for me as an American film lover whose in-laws are Indian and like really keep up with Indian film and television, it's still like Indian cinema for me is like a bit of a mystery. I mean, it's this huge film producer that's creating entertainment in like multiple languages, and it runs parallel with Hollywood, but there's this like limited cross-pollination. So my first question is, for an American audience with limited exposure, how would you describe the Indian film industry?
It's very, like you said, vast. There's languages that are all over the country, and some languages are similar to each other and some languages are completely different from each other. Some cultures in adjacent states might be similar, but cultures from the north to the south and east to the west, they're very like you're in different countries. what I specifically focus on, because that I've grown up in a Hindi speaking family and in the Hindi speaking part of the world, is what you might quote unquote be called Bollywood, even though that term itself is not, it's too vast. It's not really an accurate term to express what Hindi cinema is all about. So I primarily focus on Hindi cinema. But then there's also, when you go further south of Maharashtra, the state where Mumbai is, where the Hindi cinema hub is, you go south of Maharashtra, you have Kannada cinema, you have Tamil cinema, Telugu cinema, Malayalam cinema, different languages, different filmmakers, different aesthetics, different histories. And then you go, further up, you go towards the east side of the country. You have Bengali cinema, which is where Satyajit Ray was from. And Satyajit Ray, as everybody knows, his movies traveled the world before any of that international cinema concept even existed, right? He's won an Oscar. Filmmakers like Wes Anderson clearly are still very much inspired by Satyajit Ray's work. You see it in movies like even the latest Wes Anderson film, Asteroid City. Then if you go further up north of the country, there's Punjabi cinema, there's cinema from Jammu and Kashmir, which is a completely different side of the country with completely different stories from people who have lived there, seen the strife there, the conflict. So to fully understand Indian cinema, you need a committee of 20 people talking to you about different languages and different stories, because it is just not possible for one person to have that kind of knowledge and information, primarily because the cultures are so different, the languages are so different. We may watch, subtitles have made things so easy. Streaming platforms, everything is available. You can watch new movies in big cities. Where I live in Mumbai, latest releases are in theaters. So it's very accessible, but the actual contextual information and understanding of a Tamil film will actually really come from somebody who's grown up in that part of the country, in the southern part of the country. So yeah, to fully understand what Indian cinema is, you need to talk to many, many people, read many, many books. It's very diverse, it's very deep, and it's just beautiful. It's amazing. I'm so proud.
Yeah, that's an incredible description, and I love because I've only been to the subcontinent once before my wife and I got married, and the ferocity of that description of just the cinema side would definitely reflected my experience of walking into New Delhi for the first time. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
It's like, oh my God, there is a lot happening here, which is really exciting. So maybe just focusing on the Hindi portion, like your specific, your primary focus. What do you think is exceptional about the Hindi film industry? Like, what does it do well?
It is one of the oldest industries, cinematic industries in the country, in that before cinema became a thing, before theaters were a reality, big screen projections were a reality, there was a lot of live plays and theater plays that happened in Mumbai. There was a lot of Parsi theater, a lot of people, stage acting, play acting, which kind of eventually mixed with a lot of other, social reasons and economical reasons, gave way to the first sort of film industry to be established in Mumbai, if I'm getting my historical facts here correct. So it goes way, way back. And in that way, our stories are so rich, our stories are so deep, because India is also, in the Hindi part of the country is also there's a lot of stories of families. There's a lot of stories of family history, of where you come from. And India as a country has only been independent for a little over 70 years. It's not even been 100 years of our independence. So this country has seen a lot of evolution in a very short amount of time. As the world has progressed with technology, with, all sorts of science things and communications, India has progressed along with the rest of the world, but we've had to run at a faster speed to catch up. What America had 200 years to do, we've had a little over 70 years to catch up. So the country has seen a lot of evolution really fast, industrial revolution and agricultural revolution, and our own stories of independence. Then, various governments with various agendas and wars. There have been many wars after India gained independence in the late 40s as well. The separation of not just India and Pakistan, but the separation of India and Pakistan and Bangladesh becoming a separate country. That's a whole other side of history. So our stories are very rich because there's so much to pick up from. A lot has happened in the country, and specifically in Mumbai, because the film industry is older here, it's more well established here, there's been more money here to spend on cinema, on making these big films. And hence, like, you'll see with the exception of now filmmakers like S.S. Rajamouli, who's made RRR, which is arguably the biggest film of the country, and not just in the manner that it's traveled the whole world, but in the money that's gone into making the film, and before that, the money he put into making Bahubali. But with the exception of filmmakers like Rajamouli, we've got the biggest kind of that's in the last couple of years, there have been films starring Rajnikant, etc., that have had big budgets going into the film, but a lot of money is in the Hindi speaking film industry. So the films here are bigger, grander, more international locations. And but honestly, like, as much as our cultures differ from various languages, our cultures are also very similar in terms of, like, once you'll find a lot of stories of the history of the country. Like, various languages will have stories about independence, but told from a different lens, because the people who are making movies in West Bengal will have a completely different side of the story to tell, versus people who are in Jammu Kashmir will have a different side of the story of the same story to tell. So yeah, I know it's a very roundabout way of, like, answering a very simple question.
No, I think no, that's excellent. I'm curious, on the other side, what do you think are some of the inherent problems of the Hindi film industry from your perspective?
I think right now we are in a place where we're struggling with streaming versus theatrical releases a lot. And that's not just a uniquely Indian problem. I think that's a global conversation and a global debate happening very much so. In fact, is when I visit the United States and I'm talking with my members of my family, extended family here, they're telling me that people don't go to movie theaters anymore, which is just so depressing, unless it's a film like Oppenheimer or Barbie, when you book tickets in advance. But in India, I think also we're at a place where we are figuring out the merits of both the forms of display of broadcasting your film. What kind of film would make what kind of money? I think we're still grappling with that. But I don't know. A lot of things are being resolved. Like, until recently, writers not getting enough credit for the work that they put into movies was a big problem. But that's also changing, with more and more writers coming forward with more and more directors coming forward with crediting their writers in a bigger, more major way. More and more female filmmakers getting opportunities to tell their stories. That was not, like, happening 10 years or 12 years ago. If you were a female filmmaker, you were pretty much the only one in your immediate circle of people. Now there's more. Yeah, I mean, it's got the same kind of, I think, as of right now, also we're seeing more interference or kind of, I don't even know what to call it, from, you're seeing, like, government officials getting involved in how movies are being promoted. There's a lot of more vocal agitation in response to certain things in certain films, which, as a film critic, is bothersome to see. Is that a pressure that filmmakers are going to buckle under, to only talk about certain things and not talk about certain things? It's an evolving kind of change that we're observing right now. Let's see where it goes.
Just from you personally, what are some of the Hindi films that you would recommend to an American viewer that is interested in exploring this world of cinema?
It's really funny you ask me this right now, because last week there's a massive Hindi film released called Rocky Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahani, the love story of Rocky and Rani. And it is a beautiful, big, colorful celebration of love and family and values and things, done in a very classic quote unquote Bollywood fashion. Lots of song and dance, but good storytelling and a good message that the film is kind of talking about, and a good concern that a filmmaker has, that Karan Johar, is trying to explore through this film along with his writers. And I watched it in a movie theater in Pennsylvania, and I was the only one, and it broke my heart. Admittedly, I watched it Friday morning, like 10 a.m. So not a lot of people are probably going to the movie theaters on a Friday morning at 10 a.m. But I hope that there's more awareness of movies like this, that you want to learn about India, go and watch. Okay, fine. I understand Rocky and Rani Ki Prem Kahani is a big film that might still reach people because it's so big. They're marketing it so this thing. And the movie stars are very huge. Ranveer Singh and Alia Bhatt are two of the biggest movie stars of the country, and they're in this film. But then there's so many other films that also are going to film festivals and are coming to the United States of America. There were movies at the New York Indian Film Festival. There's also moving. This is not technically America, but there's lots of Hindi films, not just Hindi films, Indian films at Toronto this year. Slowly as the festival lineup is being announced, there is a Hindi film called Kill that is going to Toronto Film Festival. There's a Punjabi film starring Diljit Dosanjh, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's also an Indian documentary that's going. So movies are, not every film and every production house has the budget of an SS Rajamouli promoting RRR all over the world, because that takes a lot of money and a lot of people and concerted effort. So my thing is that if there are people who see an Indian film playing at a movie theater near you or at a festival near you, there's museums in Washington, D.C. Recently, that's where they showed Joyland. And I went and I spoke with the audience there in kind of a movie club format. We just had a discussion about the film. So if you find that kind of thing happening, explore, check it out. Think of it as going to a museum, as doing something to enhance your knowledge this weekend. I want to learn more about the world. And what is a better way to do that than to go watch movies from a different side of the world?
Absolutely. I could not agree with that more. And I think that's the thing that I cherish about particularly world cinema, but also American cinema more than anything. I mean, movies can give you a sense of place and time
Yeah.
in a way that other mediums just can't. I went to India before my wife and I like created this sort of like Hindu fusion wedding ceremony that we did. Like, watching the films of Satyajit Ray that weren't even in the correct place of India, right? Like Satyajit Ray's Bengali, like just even that slightest cultural awareness, like allowed me to feel more comfortable, like on that trip, and like gave me some sense of like location. And that is a gift that is so incredible that cinema can give us. And I think to your point about these films playing in theaters, I know that here in Atlanta, like on the north side of town, the films follow the diaspora. And like I know that even just in our local independent cinema scene, we're starting to see like the crossover and the trickle down. And I think even things like RRR have interested people more in what Hindi cinema has to offer. So that's very exciting. And I want to talk about RRR more a little bit later, but it is very cool to see that shift.
Yeah. Also, if people want recommendations of more Indian things to watch, please follow my Instagram. I talk about movies there all the time.
Yeah.
If I recommend something on my Instagram, please watch it.
And Sucharita's Instagram is amazing. So yes, please check that out. Now, I'm curious, like, so you're a film critic. Film criticism as an art form in and of itself. What made you want to pursue this as a career?
I was doing radio shows until 2015, and I did that for most part of my career because I started really early. I started doing full-time radio show hosting at the age of 19, and then it just one thing led to another. From Delhi, I moved to Mumbai, and in 2015, YouTube in India was really like peaking. It was doing very, very well. We had a lot of comedy collectives who were making sketch videos for YouTube. And I think around 2012, it had begun to like really kind of come into focus as an alternative career option. But by 2015, it made sense to actually step a foot in and see if that is something that can satisfy me professionally and creatively. So I started kind of freelancing with the film journalism platform Film Companion, that is headed by one of the most popular film critics in India, Anupama Chopra. She is the founder and CEO and editor And I always wanted to do things on video, because after radio, I felt like I wanted to try a different format. I did radio for a very, very long time. It just made sense to try to do that, and it took off. We started doing one review a week, perhaps one review every 2 weeks, even back in 2015. And there seemed to be an audience that was engaging with my reviews very actively. There was also a huge part of the audience that did not want, 27-year-old on their YouTube screens talking to them about feminism and sexism in Hindi cinema. So there was a lot of backlash, a lot of like, get off my phone. You're literally getting this for free. Don't watch it. But it took off because there seemed to be an appetite for it. And since then, obviously, my reviewing style and my, kind of analytical look towards cinema has also changed and evolved over the years as I've changed and evolved as a human being. But then it's just been nonstop since then. And to kind of have the ability to engage with an audience that is interested in listening to a feminist perspective on Hindi cinema, saying that, we've not seen films analyzed this way before. And I guess my style was also a lot more approachable. And, people felt like this was somebody talking to them and not at them. And YouTube was the perfect platform to make that happen, because people were exploring YouTube on a daily basis. It was exploding in India. India was working very hard to establish, kind of quote unquote creators. I don't like to use that term, but like creators in the Indian YouTube space. And there was a time when my reviews in 2016 and 17 were trending on the top 10 Indian videos every week, week after week, week after week. And it just made sense to keep working harder at it, keep customizing my review for the YouTube platform. And in 2020, I started doing this on my own because, in the pandemic, people suddenly had a lot of time, and I had a lot of time as well, and I didn't know what to do with it because new films were not releasing. So I wasn't getting commissioned to do any movie reviews. And I had to do something with my time. So I decided to start a channel where I was talking about movies that I had missed when they released. For instance, Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach. I didn't watch the movie when it released because I was watching something else and reviewing something else, and I decided to watch it. Like Uncut Gems, like this week I just want to talk about Uncut Gems because I never spoke about Uncut Gems. And again, that took off as well, and I started finding an audience, and I have a very involved audience on my YouTube channel. People are engaging, people are talking to each other. It's been great. Like I came to Washington, DC, and I randomly just posted on my Instagram, hey, if anyone's around, do you want to meet up? And on like a 12-hour notice, like 20 people showed up just to meet up and, eat chips with me in a park. It's great.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And like being a movie lover, being a cinephile can, at times be this kind of like siloing experience. And I've experienced even just in a small degree compared to your audience, but through this show, I've been able to meet people, to like expand that connection. To have these conversations or watch these conversations like play out in the comments of something I post. And it's like when it's especially when it's a positive conversation, it's incredibly affirming, and you feel so much less alone. As opposed to like sitting in a dark theater by yourself,
Yeah, and isn't it incredible to know that you're developing an audience, people who are actively interested in talking to you, having a conversation with you, and people you're learning from also. You're learning behaviors, you're learning how they engage, and they're learning how you look at cinema, and you're having dialogue in the comments every week. It can also get very bad. It can also get very toxic because it's a lot, it gives you a lot of anxiety if you really allow it to take over your entire being. There's a lot of times when I have to zoom out and look around in my life. Like this is my home. This is my husband, and that's the dog. I'm dog sitting right now. And then I need that perspective a lot. Like Instagram is not all my reality, but it's incredible to have the feeling of developing an audience. It's really special.
Now, you talked about the feminist perspective that you bring to your work, which is, first of all, like incredible and so valuable, but also has this amazing historical precedent. I couldn't help but notice in the background of some of your reviews, you have 5001 Nights at the Movies by Pauline Kael. There's this long tradition of women critics that go back to the earliest days of Hollywood, and there's of course Pauline Kael, Molly Haskell. In India, I was reading about a woman named Nikat Kazmi, and then of course there's Anupama Chopra, who hired you at Film Companion. So how has this tradition of female critics kind of influenced you, or have you thought about it at all as you've explored this career?
You realize it when you're really into it, and when you're doing it, and when you get the response from people, and you realize that they don't really want to listen to a female film critic, and then you realize the importance of the women who came before you and what they must have had to deal, that you're standing on their shoulders, the doors they opened that you walked through, people like Anupama, people like Nikat Kazmi, people like Pauline Kael. There's a film festival, one of the biggest film festivals in India, the Mumbai Film Festival, MAMI, that is coming back this year in October. A couple of years ago, I attended the festival, and like I do every year, and I watched the documentary on Pauline Kael, What She Said, The Art of Pauline Kael. And to see that film and see filmmakers like Scorsese and Tarantino come on and talk about what Pauline Kael did for them indirectly, not by consulting on their movie scripts, but by her reviews that they imbibed and then used in their work. And Scorsese is a filmmaker who's spoken about it over and over again, even when he's talking with cultural commentators like Pretend It's a City. Even when he's appearing on that show, he talks about the importance of female cultural commentators on popular culture and how that informs opinions of filmmakers. He's even spoken about in the Roger Ebert documentary that is, I don't know if it's still on Mubi, but in that documentary, he talks about when Ebert and Siskel trashed his film and how that felt and how he came back from that. You realize how much harder it is for women to be opinion makers on a place like the World Wide Web once you get into it and once you make this a professional endeavor. Brie Larson, when she was promoting one of her Marvel movies, said in one interview or two interviews that we need more female film critics talking about movies. And it upset people so much. They went and downvoted the film on various rating platforms before the film had even released. It upset people so much. There were rows upon rows of YouTube videos about how Brie Larson's the worst, and all she said was, we need more female film critics. And that really goes to show how much further we have to go, not just in India, but globally in the world. It's not like Hollywood is doing any better, with having more feminist conversations around cinema. And my perspective towards cinema is still very limited. I mean, sure, it comes from the point of view of a woman, but I don't have the trans lived experience. I don't have the Dalit lived experience, which is also very important to bring into conversations. I don't have the queer lived experience at all. As a queer woman, what is it like to be a queer woman in India, watching cinema, talking about cinema, contextualizing cinema? So we don't just need more female film critics. We need we need film critics from all underrepresented communities, because film criticism, the greats have told us, informs writers and directors, whether they do it directly or indirectly. We are cultural commentators saving conversations around cinema for posterity. People are going to read our reviews long after we are gone if the internet continues to function the way it functions. Why we know Citizen Kane is so great is because of everything Pauline Kael wrote about Citizen Kane. She might have disagreed with the film or agreed with the makers of the who wrote the film and who gets credit for the film, but she wrote about that film. And Raising Kane, her essay on the movie, will survive for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So we need to bring more voices, not just female voices. Yes, for sure, female voices. We need more women. We need more voices from more underrepresented communities as well.
There's a quote that a little clip is popped up on my Instagram, actually just this week. I saved it for this interview. And you may have seen it. It's from a New York Magazine art critic named Jerry Saltz. And in this little video clip, I think he's on another podcast, and he says this. He says, quote, Right now, art is coming from everywhere, by everybody, all at the same time, from every place, about anything. Right now, everything is in play, and right now, criticism is temporarily suspended. By and large, criticism doesn't exist. Do you agree with this statement?
It's very murky right now what constitutes criticism and what is just, again, to use this term very loosely, content creation. Because content creation became a legitimate profession in the lockdown in such a big way, starting in 2020, in the pandemic, especially in India. And I can speak to my experience living there. So many people burgeoned on these platforms, Instagram, because TikTok was banned in India. So all the people who were making TikTok videos, millions and millions of followers and viewers, all migrated to Instagram because Reels immediately launched right after that. And it became a legitimate money-making profession because brands and advertisers, they saw there's an audience here. Let's put money into this. One of the more easy things to talk about, because easy, and I use the term loosely again, to talk about is movies, because everybody watches movies, everybody knows movie stars, and everybody thinks that they can talk about movies because you go to a restaurant and you like the food or you don't like the food, but that doesn't make you a food critic. There's a different skill set that goes into becoming a food critic. But the kind of attitude towards it became that if I can go to a restaurant and I can like or dislike a dish and I can talk about liking or disliking a dish, why can't I do the same thing with movies? I can talk about liking or disliking a film, which in and of itself, sure, there's no gatekeeping here. If you want to talk about liking or disliking a film, go ahead and talk about it. But film criticism is obviously, I don't have to explain how it varies and how it differs from just talking about whether you like a film or not, or whether somebody recommends a film to you should go watch this or don't go watch this. There's so much more to it. So yes, I do agree to a certain extent that actual film criticism is on a pause right now. I am too new of a film critic. Kind of, I've only been doing this for a little over 6 years or so. So I'm too new to have any understanding of how, if this has happened before and how it evolved from there. When television became big, cinema gave way to television. Did that change cultural commentary? Now television is given way to internet, and even on the internet, we're going into more kind of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and it's all fragmented. Cultural commentary is changing around all of this also right now. But I do agree that film criticism, genuine, intellectual, intelligent, and helpful film criticism may be on a bit of a pause right now. I say this to a lot of people that I know in the Hindi film industry, and I do have the good opportunity to speak with some of the biggest movie stars here and some of the biggest filmmakers here, that it's on the filmmakers, I think, to a certain extent, to encourage film criticism also. If Martin Scorsese says Ebert and Siskel he watched every week, or he read everything Tarantino says he read everything Pauline Kael wrote, or even Orson Welles, back in the day, went ahead and, spoke whatever he said. But if you decide as a filmmaker, and you're a filmmaker, you decide which criticism are you choosing to engage with. Are you going to legitimize the person who decides that 30 seconds or 45 seconds is enough to declare what the film is about? Or are you going to become that person who's going to look for the 2,000 word piece in a publication, who's going to look for the 15-minute analytical video on a movie or on a TV show, or and encourage others to view that or read that as well? As a filmmaker, don't just wait for your movie reviews to come out. If you are engaging with movie reviews that are coming out that are not about you, not have anything to do with you, are not going to directly affect you, but if they bring something to you as a creative voice, share them, tell people about them, and encourage better criticism around cinema. All of us are going to benefit from it. It's not just the film critic who's going to get those views and those likes and shares. if you encourage legitimate film criticism as a filmmaker who obviously has a much wider and larger reach and a much bigger power than an independent film critic, or even a film critic with a publication for that matter, we've got to work together, and encourage each other, I think.
Wow. I think that's fascinating. And that's something that had not occurred to me before, but it makes total sense. And the one of the things that I've often kind of thought about is and one of the things that I've loved so much about discovering you and engaging with your content is and even the parts that are in Hindi and that I can't quite understand but it's so clear that you take on something that I associate more with the like a capital F, capital C film critic, which is that you're absorbing the films like through your being, and you're not there to give a score or to give a thumbs up, thumbs down. You are reflecting about how this art has entered into the prism of you, of your soul, of your mind, and then reflecting that back out, which is a very, a more, certainly a more Pauline Kael-like approach, but she's not the only one who does this. And I think that this is, because that is such a more difficult but more thoughtful way to engage with art. We are so this is happening across culture, right? Where we are so desperate for maybe speed and also like quick hits of meaning that now films are boiled down into a Rotten Tomatoes score or an IMDb score. And that is not the way to engage with movies. I mean, it is, yes, you can check the Rotten Tomatoes score. That's fine. But like, what does that tell you about how this film is resonating with people really? You're not getting the firsthand experience of, and you're not being shown how to let a piece of media, bounce around inside of you and change you from the inside out. And that's something that you do in your work, and something that I find immense value in.
Thank you. You have to contextualize everything. What RRR means to a certain part of India, it doesn't mean the same thing to a Western audience that doesn't have the context on RRR. It is a very, divisive movie. There has been opinion and very well thought out, very well researched opinion on the film that has come from Indian writers who contextualize the film in the current place where 2023 India stands and what the film is saying and talking about and drawing from, that a Western audience, and it could be the biggest film critic, it could be A.O. Scott, but you just won't have that understanding of what the film is doing in India right now. And it could be anything. It could be, we can all love movies, international films like Parasite, and we all loved Parasite, but you and I can't fully acknowledge or that fully say authentically that we understand every Parasite. We understand the film, we understand the craft, and we understand what Bong Joon-ho is saying with the film. But where it stands in the cultural conversations of the countries that these international films are traveling all over the world from, that only a film critic from that area, and specifically for a country like India, a film critic specifically who belongs to that part of India will be able to authentically speak of. So yeah, like you said, there's many prisms a film has to go through and then come across the other side for all the various things a movie is talking about, because it's not just, it's not just one piece of writing. Every film is 100 pieces of writing put together.
Yeah. There's another aspect of film watching that I think is like not appreciated today, or has just been sort of degraded, which is that when you watch a film and you don't know how you feel about it, you know what I mean? And like, I think people take that and it's like, they just assume that that's like the film's fault, or like it's a bad part of the cinema experience. Whereas you could look at it in another way, which is that this film made me feel something. I don't quite know what it is. And that forces you to seek out that criticism to try to answer the question of like, what is that feeling? Like, what is that vibe? And as a segue, I actually felt this in watching RRR because a lot of it made me quite uncomfortable, and so reading more, and then a little, with my cursory understanding of the sort of cultural and political world of India that it's coming out of, this the feelings of the sort of militaristic sort of borderline propaganda that it was promoting is something that makes me feel uncomfortable about American movies that glorify the military and violent means, and watching that the sequence of revolutionaries at the end and seeing Gandhi conspicuously missing, things like this, for a lot of American audiences, I think it was like, oh, they're dancing, like this is great, you know what I mean? And like you kind of you don't see it in the political prism from which it's coming.
Yeah. Same is true for the other side of the world, right? Any side of the world. When A.O. Scott recently announced his retirement from film criticism, and he went on to the Daily podcast, the New York Times podcast Daily, and he spoke with Michael Barbaro explaining, and another journalist explaining why he was choosing to retire from film criticism. And I think now he's going to write about books, if I'm not mistaken. But it gave me a completely different understanding of how superhero movies have changed the American kind of landscape of big cinema, and everybody understands the money they bring and the money that goes into it, and you know what Kevin Feige has done, and like the way he's marketed these films globally. India is such a big market for superhero films that I do believe that the last Avengers, Infinity War or Endgame, one of those two, released in India, I think a day before it even released in America. It is such a big market for these superhero films. So you absorb it and you understand it. But listening to him talk about how that has changed film writing to an extent where he doesn't even want to do it anymore, eye-opening. It's not a perspective that I would have had otherwise if I had not heard him talk about it. So yeah, it's both ways.
I don't really know anything about the sort of independent side of Hindi cinema. How are people, and I'm sure this is a vast answer and like probably like too complicated for like a quick like response, but what are some of the ways that you're seeing people work, around the Hindi film system? How are people operating in the margins and telling stories, that don't have to go through the approval process of some, multi-layered studio? Are they finding success? Are they running into problems? Are they able to distribute their films? What does the independent world of Hindi cinema look like?
There is a debate about how good or bad streaming platforms are for, to be able to continue to tell authentic stories. But what I have seen in the last couple of years is that they've given an avenue to an independent filmmaker to be able to at least, if not immediately reach a point where they can tell their own story, that at least they can tell a story which has been written by a writer's room and a different group of people. At least a filmmaker like Ajit Pal Singh, I'll give you an example and I'll send you links to his work. He made a movie that premiered at Sundance, A Fire in the Mountains. No one knew about the film in India because, again, fully independent film, very small, set in a hill station up in the north of the country, small budget, small everything, but beautiful film, Fire in the Mountains. No one knew about the film, even though it traveled all the way to Sundance, and he made it to international publications. Then he got the opportunity to direct a TV series on a streaming platform, and people saw that work, which led people to discover the film, and then the film then after that got a release on the same streaming platform. Would that film have reached any audience at all if the streaming platform didn't exist? Questionable. Because we don't anticipate people buying movie tickets for independent films. People are barely buying movie tickets for mainstream commercial films because it's it's an excursion, it's a whole day, etc., etc. There's money involved, but the film got a streaming release. So I think Hindi filmmakers have at least tried to make the most of the streaming boom that has happened over the last few years in India, and not just on international platforms like Netflix and Amazon, which kind of pretty much operate like big studios, but there are other platforms in India that are allowing this to happen. There's Sony Live, Z5, Voot, etc., and I wish I could speak with more in-depth information, provide you more in-depth information on this, but I don't really particularly know how that scene is moving, but I do know that indie filmmakers are getting to tell their stories, if not their own stories, with at least someone else's story on a streaming platform and getting work.
I've been speaking about this a little bit recently. I mean, it's this real Faustian bargain between accessibility and scalability as far as becoming profitable on these streaming sites. You know, they give you this incredible access, but in order to make money in the zero cost distribution system, you have to have incredible scale just to turn any kind of a profit, and that's where the independents are really disadvantaged. And you see it play out on a system like Spotify, where only the top of the top are able to produce a living from it, and everybody else is fighting for scraps. And it's I think something's got to give here in the future.
Yeah, I do know friends of mine who are indie filmmakers who had films that toured with various film festivals across the world. And eventually, when Netflix came in India, they purchased the film to be shown for a couple of years on Netflix, and they made their money back. And that allowed them to pursue another film that they could start working on. And I'm not saying, Netflix and Amazon and all these platforms are the messiahs and they're going to save us, because we're seeing what's happening with the SAG-AFTRA strikes right now, with the Writers Guild strikes right now, of how much money who's making and where the money is going. It's all very unfair. But I don't know. We'll see.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, because as an independent filmmaker myself, I always kind of want to know, like, what are some of the elements that you look for in a film, when it doesn't have, the big budget, the big sets, the big lights, the big stars? What are the things that you are looking for? What are the things that you've seen really make these type of films stand out?
It has to be honest. It is now very apparent when somebody is making a dishonest film for whatever reasons. What is it that you're talking about? And do you have, even if you don't have the lived experience of what you're talking about, because at the end of the day, it's not a single person performance piece. This is not a one person play. You're making a big film, so it doesn't have to be your lived experience. But are you talking about it with honesty and authenticity? Did you hire writers who can talk about the subject with honesty and authenticity? That to me is the most important thing in a film. It could be a 30-minute film. It could be 45 or 3 hours long. It could be the big Bollywood film that I watched last week, which was so honest and authentic. And it could be Oppenheimer, because that, obviously not an indie film, but you can tell that these are things that are eating Christopher Nolan from the inside. Like, how far are we going to push ourselves, technology, et cetera, et cetera. And when I watch your movie, it's obviously the most authentic thing you could ever put out, because it's a slice of your life that you're talking about, right? But having said that, watching Danny Puri's film Running, it's so real. And even though he's mixed it with magic realism and some sort of fantasy, the story is still so authentic and it's still so real. So, for an indie film, already the monies are so low. The filmmakers don't have big budgets. They're working with very small groups and teams of people. I don't think that an independent filmmaker would want to risk making a dishonest film. So in that way, you can't.
No, I love that point, because I mean, there's been plenty of times where, and I think any filmmaker could relate to this. You might start on a project, but you're never going to jump through the 20 billion hoops for no money that you have to jump through. At some point along the line, you're probably going to trip up and realize, oh God, this is not worth it.
Because the only thing you have in abundance is truth, right? Your experience of what you're telling with the story and how you're bringing your life into the story, that is what you have in abundance. It's never going to run out unless the money, which will. Yeah. So honestly, like, if a film is dishonest, like I can smell it, and it just upsets me very much.
Well, I will try very hard not to put that stank into this movie.
Thank you.
So for you, you've moved to the U.S. now, and you're now going to be splitting time between the U.S. and India. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I am now between Mumbai and the East Coast for now. I'm, figuring out how things are going here. It's very exciting. It's very interesting to attend regular film festivals here and meet filmmakers and talk to people like you, and try to see how people are interacting with Indian cinema as well, and how many not just Indian communities, like people from Pakistan are here, Bangladeshis are here, and from South Asia are here. It's really fun. I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to see where this goes.
What's the future going to look like for you, for your channel? Are you going to keep sort of on the same trajectory? Are you going to be like, what is that going to look like? Or maybe you don't even know.
I don't know right now. As of right now, I'm very happy with the way things are going right now with my channel. People are growing. It's not a huge channel. It doesn't have the million subscribers, but the number of people who are on, I really value and appreciate. And I like to do separate things for Instagram. I like to do separate things for YouTube. And now that I'm this side of the world, what I'm looking forward to the most is attending film festivals here that I've not been able to do ever, because traveling back and forth from India is very expensive. So I went to Cannes because I could go to Cannes from here, but I'm also going to go to Toronto International Film Festival for the first time, because I'm close to Toronto right now and flights are extremely affordable from this side of the world as opposed to if I was flying from India. And I'm hoping to attend Sundance, all these kinds of things now that I'm here this side of the world. So I think that is the one big change that I'm going to make in my kind of the way I watch movies. I'm going to attend as many American and Western film festivals as possible and European film festivals as possible. Let's see which ones will take me, because a lot of film festivals don't allow you in if you're not affiliated with a publication, unless you're writing for a publication that you can tell them that this is where my reviews will appear. If you're an independent commentator like I am, a lot of film festivals won't permit you. So let's see how it goes.
Well, all I can say is that we are in America are lucky to have you here, and your voice will be an incredibly valuable addition to the pantheon of American film criticism. And I have no doubt that you will get into these festivals or find the credentials to get into these festivals very soon. I'm curious. One of the, on top of you being an amazing film critic, one of the other reasons that I wanted to talk to you on the show is because at the end of the day, you're an independent creator, just like, and I know qualms about that word. You're an independent artist. Sorry.
I mean, I understand what you're saying with creator, though. It's fine.
No. Let me take that back. And I'm going to keep this all in, because you're an independent artist who has gone on this whole journey to get to the point that you're at now. I always want to ask any independent artist, when you look back through the journey through this industry to getting to where you are today, what has your inner voice been telling you?
I have many inner voices. Number one, like 10 at any given point in time. It changes depending on what the atmosphere of my immediate surrounding is, and B, political climate of the country and larger conversations that are going on in the country. But if there's one thing that I constantly tell myself, is that reminding myself how much I love doing this, how much I love watching movies and talking about movies and writing about movies. And if I didn't do this, then there is nothing that will bring me equal amount of creative satisfaction and joy. So you have to, when it feels like it's getting really tough, when it feels like you're not making enough money, there's not enough support within the industry, you're getting trolled too much, you're just living in anxiety all the time, because it's not just a film review you have written for a publication. I'm running this like a business. I have to make money on this. I have to figure out new and novel ways every 6 months when various algorithms change of what is working now and what is not working now, and how to stay true and authentic without giving into the demands of the social media platforms. And you will not find me dancing to a Bollywood song, but you will find me talking about a Bollywood song. But are people interested in watching that, or people are interested watching more in the dance? And no, more power to the dancers. That's just not my craft. Just reminding myself that if I don't do this, then there's nothing else that I will do that will make me happy. So for my own personal happiness and joy, even when things are dark and sad, you like doing this, girl. Come on. This is what you do.
I love it. Follow your bliss. Now, when you look back, what are you most grateful for?
I am very grateful for the privilege that I was born into, that I could pursue this line of career without thinking about what would happen if I don't succeed? I have a family to fall back upon. That is a privilege. My family will at least financially support me. A lot of people in India and the communities that we were talking about earlier that don't have voices critiquing cinema from those communities is also because they don't have the luxury of becoming film critics. Becoming a film critic is a very luxurious job, let me tell you, at least where I come from. It's not something that you do that is going to guarantee you a paycheck or a salary. You do it when you're not worried about a paycheck or a salary. And that is a huge privilege that I come from, that other people come from. And I am grateful for it and thankful for it. And I'm also I acknowledge it, that I come from that place where I don't have to worry about that I'll get evicted from my house if this doesn't work out. I won't be able to make rent. I'm grateful for the people around me that have supported me in this journey. My husband, my friends. I'm grateful for people who've taken my name in rooms that have enabled me to get one opportunity after another. For women who've given me that opportunity. I can't just talk about all the things that I'm grateful for without acknowledging the immense privilege I come from to be able to have these things and this kind of education that I've had, the kind of international exposure that I've had, the fact that I had a Wi-Fi connection growing up that enabled me to watch international cinema, to read international publications, to have enough money or understanding to become a member of the British Council Library, to go to that library and be able to read, etc., that kind of thing. So grateful for a lot, but a lot of it has nothing to do with me. I was just born into it.
And finally, last question. What advice would you give to any artist out there trying to find their way through this career, through this profession, through this industry?
Find your community. Find people who understand what you're going through and what you're doing. It will be so much easier to know that you're not in this together. A lot of creative journeys feel like solitary because they are solitary. No, you are making it on your own or not making it on your own. But if you have a community of people around you to share your experience with, to learn from their experiences, to share notes with, if nothing else, over a beer or dinner every couple of weeks, the difference that makes is huge. Knowing that there are others also dealing with similar or different problems, and that gives you strength. And I always tell this to anyone who comes to me for advice. You will find your platforms. You will find your voice even. You will find your mode of film criticism, whether it is writing script for a review, for a video review, or becoming a person who exclusively goes to film festivals and talks to filmmakers at film festivals. That will come, but you have to find your community first. You have to find people whose thoughts you resonate with. Make sure it's not an echo chamber. That's a thin line. But a community that you can engage with is so important.
Beautiful. Sucharita, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people follow you and see your work and find out more about what you're doing?
Most of my work is on my YouTube channel. It is under my name, Sucharita Tyagi. You can also find me posting snippets from my YouTube channel onto my Instagram page, which is an outlet I use to bring more people to the YouTube channel. But I also talk about some things on Instagram. You can find me talking occasionally on Twitter as well, because Twitter sometimes gets a little bit much to interact with people on, because people are just angry all the time. But mostly you can find me on YouTube and Instagram. And if you're in America, you might run into me at a film festival soon. Let's hope.
Amazing. Thank you to everyone out there for listening. I'll have all those links down in the show notes. So if you want to go check out Sucharita's work, just go down and do that. Be sure to follow us Behind the Slate Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You can email me all your questions, comments, your favorite Hindi film. I'd love to know it. BehindTheSlatePod@gmail.com. And until next time, that is a wrap.
जहाँ ये मस्ती नजर में छाई देता कुछ नहीं सुझाई जहाँ ये मस्ती नजर में छाई देता कुछ नहीं सुझाई
टकरा के नैन